it looks like everything's working well for you, Patricia. You share screen, and I just need to unmute yourself, and I think we're good to go.
Can you hear me?
Cool, there we go. Yep, perfect. All right, take it away.
Well, thank you very much for AD Instruments for inviting me, and everyone for sticking around, and thank you for that group that actually went ahead. So thank you, that was really appreciated. And I'm going to talk to you today about a course. I teach undergraduate science majors, and I'm going to talk to you today about a course that I actually put into the course schedule last semester as a lecture course that I decided I was going to redesign, but I had no idea how to redesign it. And so then I went on sabbatical last spring, so I missed all the hullabaloo. And then I was able to go to RMIT and then for sabbatical, and then go to AD Instruments and talk a lot with Tony about how to redesign this course. So this is my first time teaching this course, and I'm in the middle of it right now. And it's an upper level majors asynchronous course, so we never get to meet. And I've taught online for a long time, but never an upper level majors course. And then also my first time using LT. And so the first thing I wanted to do, because we're never going to meet, is to be able to form a learning community. And so I made an assignment where the students had to create an introduction video. And it was due the night before the course began. And as we all know, if you offer students extra credit points, they're more likely to do things. And that definitely worked in this case. And then to post the videos in the discussion forum back in our Canvas course, which is our learning management system. And so the first thing we had to do was to introduce yourself, and then to talk about a favorite pet that you had or a pet that you wanted to have. And then, because no one is traveling right now, put a picture of a dream vacation you really wanted to take, and then it had to be under 2 minutes, and then very non-professional, one cut. And in order to demonstrate this and to show my favorite pet, then I made a video and I posted it. And I bet no one was thinking bunny when I said favorite pet, but that always gets a nice smile from everyone. And then I polled the students ahead of time as well, just to find out what the background was. And all of them had to have a full year of biology as a prerequisite. And then half had anatomy and physiology. None had animal physiology, because I haven't taught that course in a few years. And then we had a few transfer students that did have another physiology course. And so the next big decision when always making a class is, are you going to use a textbook or not? And we know that textbooks are very expensive. And this has become really an equity situation for our students, because our students are commuters. They all work, some work full-time, and a lot of them are paying for their own education. And so what we were finding is that they weren't buying the textbooks, even if we required them, which puts them in a really big hole. And you can see the flattened out backpack there that doesn't have a textbook in it. And then once they're in that hole, then they're really expecting us to help them come out of that hole, because they're coming to class cold with no background information, which is very difficult. And so what's the solution? Redesign this course, replace the textbook with Understanding Your Physiology from LT. And my colleague who had taught this in the past used the systems approach, which is not a problem. And she went through system by system in every single disease possible in each system. And I didn't want to do that, so I really narrowed the focus of what I was going to give them. And then, because students love case studies, then of course use the LT case studies. And so the new design is basically create weekly modules in LT made up of LT lessons and their case studies, of which Dee already mentioned there's an awful lot to choose from there. And then again, Dee was also mentioning that, make the lessons low stakes. I think one of the biggest things our students, especially the pre-health students that are going to go into healthcare professions, they're afraid to guess. And especially in class, we already know that when we're face-to-face. When we say, okay, and we ask a question, very few students raise their hands, and they don't want to guess, they don't want to be wrong, they don't want to be judged, or they think they're going to be judged. And so they really lose out a lot on that, because we've all been in the situation where we thought we had the answer and we didn't say it, and the person next to us says it, and then we go, oh, I knew the answer to that. And it's very frustrating. And so that's where not having these graded and having the students get the incorrect answer and then repeat and repeat until they can get all of them correct. And that's where I say it is low stakes. And because it's asynchronous, the modules start at 7 a.m. on Monday. And let me tell you, 7:01, that's not open. Some of my students are wondering, why isn't it open? And then it ends Sunday at midnight. And that deadline is firm because they've really had a whole week times 24 hours to finish everything. And so now what I bring them back to Canvas for assessments, and they have a weekly quiz on the LT lessons. And I do what Tony mentioned for some of the quiz questions, where I bring in some of those pictures and figures from the LT lessons and I put them in. And then I ask them the questions because they would have seen it already and be familiar with it. And then I love the incorrect and correct columns in some of the lessons. And so I'll use some of those as well. And then I'll say which one's incorrect as opposed to which one's correct. And again, knowing that they've already seen some of that information. And then I create a case study worksheet where for each case study, then I have 10 questions that I'm asking them about the case study. And they have to pass that in and they get points for that. They get points for the quiz. And then we also have 3 exams are offered on Canvas, 2 exams and a final exam. And so we've only done 1 exam so far. And like I said, we're in week 9 and the next exam is the following week. And so here's 2 examples of some of the modules I created and named glucose metabolism and diabetes. And so right away, we're starting off with very basic principles, because again, a lot of these students, only half the students have had A&P, and then getting more narrow to talking specifically about the pancreas, and then also talking about the hormonal regulation, especially the glucose metabolism, right? And then I picked this case study in particular because this is an adult that developed type 1 diabetes. And I'm sure our students probably wouldn't think that, adults could develop type 1 diabetes. And so it's a very interesting case study. And it also talks about the impact on her family. And some of these other case studies talk about the impact on their mental health. So it's not just about their symptoms and their treatments. And then here's another example of one of the modules I created. And again, starting very broadly with exercise physiology introduction, and then doing all of the classical explanations of the different types of ways to stimulate a skeletal muscle and then what the response is. And again, that's a big anatomy and physiology lesson. And then also focusing narrowly on the compound nerve action potentials, which are really important and the students might not be that familiar with. And then I chose this particular case study because they're actually mentioned those compound nerve action potentials because this patient has axonal degeneration. And also there's not really a known cause for that in this patient. And I think that's important for the students to know that, guess what, even though we're teaching them cause and effect, sometimes it's not known. It can only be speculated on what the cause and effect is. So what's the early feedback? We're doing student advising right now. And I've had some of my students that are in this asynchronous class, and some of them I get to meet for the first time because they're coming for advising, and they just love it. They absolutely love the lessons, especially that they're low stake, and they're really enjoying the case studies and then actually putting everything together and connecting. And so what does the future look like? So at the end of this course, I'm going to ask the students a lot of questions as far as what type of activity helped them learn, what type of lesson, activity in the lesson, and then what ones were their favorites. That's always a good one that they like to answer. And I'm definitely going to offer this class again. And also interesting that when I put this in last fall and then COVID hit and I thought, oh my gosh, no one's going to sign up for this course. It filled in a week. And then I added more seats and those filled. And then the beginning of the semester, then I also got more students asking, including students not from our university, to take it because they really want the asynchronous. It fits in with their work schedule and their life schedule. So thank you very much for listening. And I want to really thank you, everyone at 80 Instruments, and especially Tony and his team, because one of the benefits of being on sabbatical at RMIT was I got to go to Dunedin and meet everyone and Tony and I sat in his office and we talked about planning out this course. And really thank you a lot to Ariana Boulay, who answered a lot of my emails at the beginning of the semester. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has them.
Awesome. Thanks, Patricia. So we do have one question that's come in from Katie Johnson. So have you received any feedback from students about eliminating the textbook? Do they ask for other resources?
No, they don't, and they haven't. And they have actually said they really prefer the lessons as opposed to reading long chapters. And also they like the interactivity of the lessons a lot. So no feedback on that yet.
Hopefully in the future. That's one question at the moment, but just want to thank you again. If anyone does have other questions. Oh, sorry, Patricia, yeah.
One of the other pre-survey questions I asked them was, do you usually buy the textbook? And that's when they said, and I gave them several answers, and one was yes, all the time. yes if it's not too expensive, or no, never. And students, very few students wrote, no one wrote yes all the time. They either wrote yes if it's not too expensive, and then no, never.
Huh. Yeah, it kind of
So.
fits with what I would have thought. Oh, sorry, time it. Actually, do have yeah, one more from Terry. What are your plans for ultimate assessment?
For the final exam, well, considering I haven't made it yet, I think that's the benefit of being in the middle of the semester. I think I'm going to be using more of the figures and then asking them more critical thinking questions, because everyone did really well on the first exam and we all know why, even though it was timed. So things are going to be tightened up a bit more. And then I'm also adding more of those types of figures into the quizzes. So they'll be more, expecting that more. Thank you, Terry and Katie.
Awesome. All right, so thank you again, Patricia. And all right, I'll put it back to attendee and just give a bit of a wrap up. So yeah, that concludes day 2. So if you're wanting to join the social sessions, I'll put it in the chat, but I'll put it in again. That's going to be happening right now, actually 5 minutes into it technically. So it's a great chance to be having more in-depth discussions and to actually see and hear from the other attendees. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for joining, and yeah, hopefully see you tomorrow and the following day. Enjoy the rest of your day and hopefully see you on the social session. Cheers.